Hello, my darlings. Madam Raven here, in a new little corner to record on my own little pallid bust of Pallas. I hope it sounds better. Today I'm sharing a story by Dopa Bean. It's the first in a series, and it's entitled, My Favorite Actor Doesn't Exist Anymore. Alexandre Levar is my favorite actor. You don't know who he is now, but a week ago you did. I hope someone here remembers him too. I'll try and jog memories. Alexandre Levar was a Hollywood fairy tale. After securing supporting roles in a handful of blockbusters, he moved on to his own TV series. It was called Strayaways, and it ran from 1996 through 2001. Strayaways was a cultural juggernaut, single-handedly catapulting TV from the film industry's cheap, derivative sibling to its creative and financial equal. In terms of production value and genre appeal, it was a sci-fi Game of Thrones. No one expected it to be the biggest thing in the world, but it was, until Alexandre eclipsed it. Alexandre himself developed an overwhelmingly huge and obsessive cult following. Think of supernatural fandom, but turn it up to 11, or rather 111. It was frightening. So frightening that the media dubbed it the most extensive mass obsession since Helen of Troy. The obsessive people, both men and women, by the way, often did crazy things. In fact, the things they did were crazy enough and frequent enough that at one point the situation got its own 2020 special. Alexandre's psycho following was, however, something of a splintered fandom. Is that even the right word? Some people just thought he was unbelievably good looking. I myself never shared that statement. He was pretty, but not spectacularly so. Some people thought he was a CIA asset, connected to the Oklahoma City bombings and Project Bluebird. Some people thought he was half alien, others a dark magician. A few thought he was a vampire. Still others, the Messiah. One popular theory was that he was a seed god, a divine, powerful, yet clueless entity that needed guidance to ascend and lead mankind into a new era. Hopefully you get and remember the picture. There was no rhyme or reason to these people. The only thing they all had in common was the sheer insanity on a scale no one's ever seen. That more than his considerable talent is what made him a superstar. The non-obsessive took the cynical view that it was a PR move gone wrong. In any case, despite the would-be cult following, Andre married a model and quickly had a child. The fans didn't like it, but fans never do. And what did it matter? He was on top of the world. Beautiful, sane wife, adorable daughter, and he himself was one of the most famous TV stars in the world. This is where the fairy tale turns to horror. In the most notorious Hollywood murder since the Manson family, a band of Alexandre's fans broke into his house while he was away on a film shoot. They tortured his wife and infant, then killed them. The crime and trial dominated news cycles for years. Everyone knew Alexandre's face, and due to an unscrupulous leaker, everyone saw the crime scene photos too. The media suspected everyone to the murderer's nonsense claims of trans-dimensional entity worship and reality rifts. The culprits on record justified for the double murder was that they needed to make a human sacrifice to escape the current timeline and catapult themselves into another one more suited to their desires and fantasies, one where they apparently all function as Alexandre's harem while he prepared to rule the universe. After giving a victim impact statement at the sentencing, Alexandre Lavar disappeared. It was the last anyone ever heard of him. So does any of this ring a bell? I only know he doesn't exist because I'm a moderator of a fan site. Even 12 years later, his fan following is crazy strong, and moderating takes a couple hours a day. You would not believe the amount of Photoshop, self-inserted nudes I have to deal with on a daily basis. Or maybe you would. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So I logged in this morning to perform my mod duties, or would have if the website existed. It didn't, doesn't? I don't know. The crazy thing is my computer has the website bookmarked as a favorite. If I start typing in the address, it autofills it like it exists. But it doesn't. Apparently it never did. And neither has Alexandre Lavar. I've been scouring the internet for days. Nothing, nada, no Google, no IMD, no management site, no personal site, no fan pages, not even a mention. Absolutely nothing. Now, changing the subject here, but trust me, I'm a train buff. I know it's stupid, basically a baby pastime, but trains suck their hooks, smokestacks, into me around the age of 3 and just never let go. In fact, before illness cut my career into pieces, I worked for Amtrak. Not exactly the Union Pacific Railroad, but all things considered, it was pretty close to perfect. Until the aforementioned sickness half killed me and forced me to quit. After that, I had a lot of free time on my hands. Too much. From trains, I expended into sailing, then into, of all things, astronomy. I dream away the painful days and insomniac nights by pretending I was in a boat in the middle of the Arctic Sea, charting a course to the edge of the world using the cold, brilliant stars. Between my illness and the fact that most people my age can't be bothered with steam engines and sailboats, I turned to the internet. Over time, I drifted from the popular places to old school sites, the kind that haven't been revamped since the 90s, yet hold a massive wealth of information you'd be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. While I was the youngest poster by far, most of the people were kind to me, and I made a fair number of friends. The user I bonded with most was a middle-aged outdoorsman who went by Ray. We clicked so fast that we were charting train routes and sailing trips together within a month. We got as close as a couple of internet posters can get. There was nothing inappropriate. Talking to Ray felt safe and fulfilling, the way I imagined a proper parent-child relationship was supposed to go. I know this is unhealthy and unrealistic, but I was sick and home alone most of the time. It meant a lot to me. Even a virtual parent is better than no parent. There was just one weird thing. We only communicated over these old sites. No emails, no social media, no Skype, no phone calls. It should have set off alarm bells, but I was so lonely and we clicked so well. I refused to even think about it. Besides, it wasn't like anyone could read our conversations. The site let members set up private, password-protected chat boards, which we did, just for the two of us. It was as good as being on the phone. Better, honestly. I sound like a high-pitched, anxious dimwit when I talk. Writing is much easier for me, much more natural than speaking. Still, I couldn't help myself, and I brought it up once, after we'd been talking at least a couple of hours a day for over a year. He said he couldn't do it. spouted some about being in Middle America Bermuda Triangle that muffs up signals. Makes Wi-Fi impossible, hun. And my computer's old as hell anyway. Besides, I'm ugly. No one needs to see that. I figured he either didn't quite know how to Skype or just preferred his privacy. Either way, it wasn't my business, and I come to rely on his friendship, so I never said another word about it. Now, Ray and I have been virtual route planning, star navigating, train-loving wannabe sailors together for over 4 years. As sad as it is, the man is probably my best friend and primary confidant. We have written each other every single day for years. I haven't heard from him in 3 days. Now that itself maybe isn't unusual or even problematic, aside from ramping up my abandonment issues. But there's one more thing. I can't find any record of him on our chats. We talked hundreds of thousands of words. Archives, digital backups in order to preserve our imaginary train itineraries. And of course our chat boards. None of them exist anymore. And there's one last thing. I got a notification this morning. An incoming call on Skype. The caller's ID was just a string of distorted gibberish. I've been the victim of mass spamming before. It's usually creepy like this and obscene besides, so I ignored it and blocked the caller. Blocking didn't work. They called again. And they started IMing. Sasha, it's Ray. I need to talk to you. Don't pick up. Answer, please. Don't pick up. Don't pick up. Turn it off now. It'll go away if you do. Answer me. You miss me. I know you do. I was fighting to hold back panic. Maybe an overreaction, especially when I've been trolled before, but I've had an unsettling couple of days, and this was pretty much icing on the cake. I'll be honest. I was scared to pick up the call, but not too scared to write. Where did you go? I typed. For a very long moment, I watched eclipses dance in their little bubble. Then, answer and have a look. Don't! All right, dear. Have a peek. He sent a photo, though. It was darkly colorful, one I had a very hard time making out. When it resolved, I tried to scream, but all that issued was wheezy little whine. It was part of a face, half filling the frame. A strange rictus of a smile split it way up its jagged cheek, barring a spiral of long, thin teeth that wound its way down a striped gullet. A small round eye glinted dimly from the top of the frame. It was drably luminescent gray, alien in a way I can't describe. Behind it was a blurry space, filled with the indistinct shapes lit by the dim light source I couldn't identify. I saved the picture to my computer, then I slammed the lid shut and went for a walk, rainstorm and all. A few possibilities whirled through my head. Police, sure, but what was I going to tell them? My friend who stopped communicating with me, a friend I've never met in person, a friend whose full name I don't know, trolled me a little before sending a scary picture. Also, I'm double scared because I hero worship an actor who never existed. Can you help me? See, there's no going to the cops with this. Then I thought of the fan site. My computer remembers the site. So what if I had access to the mailing list somewhere? That wouldn't help me with Ray, but it could help alleviate the truly existential crisis I've been facing for a week. Buoyed by the thought, I went back home and scoured the computer for mailing list. I found it in a temp folder and sent out a mass email. Most returned as no sender, but it looks like a few hundred went through. We'll see. I also have another problem. My Skype shows that I received and blocked incoming calls from unknown user. I've encountered the presence unknown bug before, but I didn't even know Skype could do unknown users. In any case, unknown user is definitely not the name that popped on the calls and the messages. Second, the IMs are gone. Third, that damn picture is gone too. No record whatsoever, either on Skype or on my computer. Even that last record of Ray is gone. However, I have one thin ray of hope. One of the people I emailed responded with, "This is a stupid joke." Then about 10 minutes later, "Oh my gosh, is this real?" I emailed her. Her name is Polly Sands. So far, she's the only other person who remembers Alexandre Levar. Are there any more? Hello, my darlings. Madam Raven here with part 2 of My Favorite Actor Doesn't Exist Anymore by Dopa Bean. Something is very wrong, and it goes beyond missing actors and disappearing internet friends. First, I haven't been able to leave my apartment. I know it sounds like a couple of steps up the delusional du jour ladder, but it's not. It started last night. I needed to pick up things from the store, so I prepared to leave, but it was literally impossible. A flat, nondescript expanse of white wall has replaced my front door. The windows disappeared too. Now I only have walls, empty walls, and no way out. All of my things are here, and the lights and water work. I suspect I was having a breakdown of some kind. Maybe they were invisible to me, I reasoned, but they still had to be there. So I started pushing and banging where the walls and windows used to be. Nothing worked. So I used a hammer. No matter how hard I hit it, it just bounced harmlessly, without even scuffing the paint. I tried to use my phone, but I had no signal, and nothing went through. After hours of smashing at the walls and screaming my head off, I passed out in front of the place my door was supposed to be. I startled awake to a deafening, disorienting boom. I shot up, scrambling for a door that didn't exist. The booming continued. Someone was banging on the walls, but it's weird places. Places people can't reach. The ceiling, the hallway, the bathroom. In other words, they were somehow banging on the walls inside my apartment. There was a method to this cacophony, though. It wasn't intimidation. They were searching for something, like a blind man stammering around in a cave. "Where's the door?" A man's voice, only slightly muffled, emanated from the floor. The thing is, I live on the ground floor, over a concrete foundation. No one could possibly be down there. A radio crackled and a tinny voice responded. "If you can't find the door, look for the window." "There's nothing!" Another series of inquisitive slaps and bangs, this time from the ceiling. "Nothing's here!" Loud footsteps echoed from the wall closet to my head. "There's been a mistake. It's already done." Another barrage of slapping and kicking, this time from the kitchen wall. I opened my mouth to scream for help, but the radio piped up again. "Something's in there, or it wouldn't be hidden. Find a way in and kill it." I staggered back from the door wall. Heavy footsteps sounded from the opposite side, causing me to whirl around. My clean, Spartan apartment looked empty. But those footsteps... it was madness. The stepper teleported across my apartment in a single step. Another took him to the floor above me. and the one after that underground, all in fractions of a second. There's no way in. I can't even see it. I don't even think there's anything here.
Yes, there is. If it's an animal, it will starve and the problem takes care of itself. If it's human, it has to come out eventually. Again, the problem takes care of itself.
I can't wait here indefinitely.
You will do what you need to do.
Following this cryptic pronouncement, the apartment quaked around me. I dived for the coffee table and curled underneath, clenching my teeth so my jaw wouldn't click painfully. I squeezed my eyes shut. After what felt like forever, the quaking tapered off and faded. Nothing, the man said, but he sounded distant. If anything's here, it's dead.
You will wait,
the radio voice responded crisply. I crept out from under the table and crawled to my room, where I'd left my cell phone on the bed. No signal, but I tried 911 anyway. The phone rang. I gasped and pressed the phone to my ear. A lady answered and said, "Honey, listen, I know you're scared, but you need to open the door." My heart seized and dropped to my feet. "There's none."
"That isn't true, and you know it. We want to help you. We need to help you, but you have to let us in."
In the distance, and muffled by walks, I heard the man shouting excitedly. Seconds later, the pounding resumed. I whined like a coward, like a beaten dog, and hung up. Then I shut my bedroom door and, for lack of anything better to do, booted up my computer. The Wi-Fi works. Unlike the phone, nothing has intercepted or hijacked the signal so far. So I decided to see if anything other than Alexandre Lavar was missing or different. I don't know what's happening, but I know nothing is right. This world, the one without my online friend or my favorite actor, isn't remotely the same. Everything is wrong. I don't know where to start. First, the culture is not normal anymore. Pseudo-Abrahamic philosophies are societal bedrock here. Am I right? This makes no sense. In the vision of the world I'm from, Americana is basically a cult. But in this version of the world, a cult is a dirty word because of a politically bent offshoot of one religion says so. No wonder Alexandre Lavar doesn't exist here. These attitudes mean a show like Strayaways probably wouldn't even be made now, let alone in the 1990s. In my world, pagan religions, some of which don't even seem to exist here, abound and exert political and social influence. Don't get me wrong, Christianity is definitely an important religious force. I'm Christian myself, but something else, Luciferianism, is essentially outlawed where I come from. Not that everyone necessarily agrees on right infringements, but there's a reason. In my world, and for the sake of brevity, call it World A, the satanic panic was based in reality. As in, investigators proved that a powerful, violent Luciferian cult was killing people. The cult was centuries old and had long infiltrated major governments and businesses. We officially referred to this as the scandals. The scandals brought the world crashing down. It was breathtakingly insane. For example, some European prime minister was caught dismembering wards of the state in Parliament. It was just one of many sacrifices to ensure the achievement of its political goals. But that's just one piece of it, and hardly the worst. I mean, it was an international sacrificial pedophile cult. It went to the highest levels of different governments and rightly resulted in dynastic downfalls and the shutting of many international firms, including companies that dealt in oil, textiles, shipping, banking, and the arts. Everything imploded. And none of that happened in World B. Anyway, the economy tanked, The mid-'80s through the late '90s were extremely difficult for most of the Western world because of a substantial number of Western world pillars were imprisoned or killed for engaging in frequent human sacrifice. Speaking of sacrifices, it's not unusual, though it is frowned on, to sacrifice animals, especially in rural areas. We have folk remedies and witch doctors and self-styled sorcerers in droves, high priests and priestesses for dozens of major religions and thousands of their offshoots. Sorry I keep bringing it up. I just can't wrap my head around the difference in terms of faith. Also, things in World A are a lot, simpler? We're not poor. If anything, low-class people have a lot more of everything, including assets and general security. We have rich people, of course, most of whom earned their wealth after the scandal. What we don't have are the old money dynasties pulling all the strings anymore. This is because so many of the old money bloodlines were tied up in the scandals. Their money was seized, no one really knows where it went, and they're all dead or rotting away in underground cells. Believe it or not, everything actually worked out okay for normal folks. I mean, things weren't easy at first, but it all leveled out on the small scale, and people are doing fine. So I've covered cultural, history, and very slight approximation of economy. There's one last thing that's really standing out to me. Healthcare. In World A, a good country doctor will take a $20 bill and a laying hen or piglet. In fact, it's so common we've got farmer doctors the way we used to have barber surgeons. Like the industries are almost intertwined in some regions. As for hospitals, they can be expensive, but they don't ever bankrupt working-class patients. We might be simple, and we might be pretty poor on the national scale, but no one in World A dies because they don't have any money for medicine. Don't get me wrong, it was bad for a little while, but when the economy crashed post-scandals, everyone, including doctors, surgeons, dentists, and lawyers, had to figure out a system that allowed everyone to survive, and this is how it turned out. So does any of this sound right? Does anyone remember this, or does everyone else only know World B? Anyway, partway through this insane research session, I got another batch of MIs from someone who says he's Ray, my internet best friend who stopped talking to me 4 days ago. This time the user's screen tag isn't unknown, and it certainly isn't a string of gibberish. The tag is Straya Ray 9. It probably means nothing, but I can't quite convince myself of that. The messages arrived all at once with disparate timestamps. Some of the timestamps are weeks old. Altogether, they spell out very elaborate instructions for what sounds like a hell of a train ride. Here are the described messages from Ray. This is what you need to do. Amtrak, Bakersfield, walk in at 11:01 p.m. Not before, not after. Buy a ticket from the second window from the left. Don't tell him where, only tell him one for the 11:31. No more, no less. Take the ticket and wait as far as you can from the window. When the ticket seller starts calling you, ignore him. If he says your name before the train comes, run away from the station. No matter what he does, don't react. Even if he screams at you or touches you, he can't harm you unless you acknowledge him. Don't give your ticket to anyone, no matter what. Ignore everyone, no matter what. When the train comes, board quickly and take any seat. Don't speak to anyone. Don't interact with anyone, even if they speak, yell, or touch you. Wait until sunrise and start counting the stops. Get off at the 5th stop after sunrise. Do not get off before. Do not miss your stop. I will be waiting for you. I barely scanned the messages before typing back. I can't get out of here. There are no doors. A wild barrage of messages followed. Tough luck for you. Look at what's the same. Trap, trap, trap. Starve, starve, starve. It's not what it seems. I want to tell you more. Where are you? Where are you? Them in, show me where. Look at what's the same, and they won't see you. Where the freak are you, slut? Take the train. They can't get on the train yet. Bye. And that was it. I've been sitting here for hours waiting for him to come back online. No luck so far. Meanwhile, my cell phone keeps ringing and the man outside is still trying to find a way in. I don't know what Ray means by look at what's the same. Nothing is the same, and honestly, I don't even know if that was Ray. Even if it is, I don't know why he sent me all of that. I guess it isn't any stranger than what's happening now, but still. I hope I figure out what's happening soon. I need to get out of here somewhere. I still have light and water, but not much food. I don't think I'll last very long. So quoth this raven. Hello, my darlings. Madam Raven here with part 3 and the finale of My Favorite Actor Doesn't Exist Anymore by Dopa Bean. About a week ago, my favorite actor, and for that matter, favorite shows, favorite movies, and best friend stopped existing. It goes beyond that. According to the information I found online, the entire world is different. I'm not a historian and don't know enough about the past from my timeline to fill in the gaps here, which is unfortunate. I think it would help me figure out what happened. Anyhow, shortly after I discovered my world stopped existing, the windows and doors of my apartment disappeared, with no way to mark the passage of day or night. I had no idea how much time passed. My cell phone was unreliable. One moment it said 0300, the next 1700, and then 1100. My laptop wasn't much better. It reported linear time, but sometimes a minute stretched endlessly, and sometimes 10 hours disappeared in the literal blink of an eye. Additionally, someone was lurking outside my apartment this entire time, trying to find a way in order to kill me. They weren't able to get in, but I wasn't able to get out. During this time, I received a strange series of IMs from someone who claims to be my missing friend, Ray. Maybe Ray told me to leave and board a very specific train in a very specific way. When I told him there was no way out of the apartment, he said to look for what was the same, and signed off after another creepy series of IMs. This was all good and well, except I'd be facing down a killer even if I escaped. Nevertheless, I took my friend's word to heart and obsessively went through everything in my apartment. I focused on the doors, bedroom, bathroom, closet. Those were the same, and each of those rooms had doors. Maybe those doors would open up to an exit. Of course, that didn't happen. And it makes sense. The rooms were part of the apartment. Given the absence of doors and windows, the apartment had changed significantly. Cupboards, pantries, and cabinets were the same. They were attached or built into the apartment, so they were part of it. What did I have that had a door and wasn't part of the apartment? My microwave? The oven? Then it finally hit me. The refrigerator. The refrigerator was the same, and it was mine. I'd brought it with me when I moved in. There was just one problem. I'd opened it frequently over the past several days to access my dwindling food supply. It was just a fridge, but I had nothing else to go on by that point, so I tried it. I approached the fridge with an almost feverish anticipation, half believing that my thoughts would be enough to turn my absurd hopes into reality. I finally opened it up and saw nothing but the same alarmingly empty shelves I'd been facing for days. Anger surged and overflowed. I'd started throwing the food and shelves everywhere. Glass shattered, food containers exploded all over the floor. Juice bottles burst on impact. Painfully aware of tears on my face, I braced both arms against the fridge and glared inside at the empty expanse of whiteness. I felt inexplicably betrayed. I'd built the fridge up into my last hope. It was ridiculous, but without it I was forced to confront a very ugly and fundamental insane reality. I was trapped, and like all permanently trapped things, I was going to die. It was easier to stare at the back of the fridge than to contemplate this truth. Luckily, this meant I caught sight of a very odd, visually upsetting flicker on the fridge's back wall. Then it warped and stretched. The smooth white walls and unsettling artificial light remained, illuminating a corridor that looked endless. I weighed my options. I didn't know where I was or what, if anything, waited at the end of this new, ridiculous fridge corridor. Maybe it would spill me out in front of the man who was trying to get into my apartment to kill me. Maybe it went on forever and I was just trading one trap for another. But if I went inside, I had a chance. If I stayed here, I'd starve. So I left the fridge open and quickly packed a change of clothing, my wallet, phone, and computer. I filled the only intact bottle I had with tap water and packed it and my scant food supplies in the backpack. I dragged my kitchen table over to prop the fridge open. The last thing I needed was for the door to swing shut and throw that corridor into darkness, and stepped inside. My fridge is tall but narrow, and I started to feel claustrophobic very quickly. The harsh light played tricks on my eyes, creating shadows from nothing and imbuing the vast, bland whiteness with a nightmarish quality. My backpack kept bumping the sides. Each rustle and thud made my heart stop. About 5 minutes in, I tried to turn around, not to go back, just to look, and realized there wasn't enough room to turn. Suddenly desperate, I craned my neck. Far, far away, barely the size of a postage stamp, was the image of my food-covered kitchen. The wooden table glinted dully in the refrigerator's white light. I shuddered and kept on. After an indeterminate amount of time, all the light suddenly disappeared. I tried to whirl around and nearly trapped myself. Fighting panic and terror, I managed to face forward again. I scanned desperately for a glimpse of my kitchen, but I'd gone too far. Only darkness behind me and even more ahead. I thought about going back, but the notion of marching backward with a pitch-black tube of trans-dimensional darkness was worse than marching forward into a pitch-black tube of trans-dimensional darkness. So I continued. Just a few minutes later, I saw a tiny pinprick of light. No, 3 pinpricks, twinkling like stars straight ahead. I tried to run, but my backpack somehow kept lodging itself against the wall, acting like a finicky brake whenever I tried to move too fast. The tiny pinpoint of light grew with surprising speed. They appeared to be 3 open doorways. I frowned as I got closer. Fighting off a shudder, 2 of those doors appeared to lead into my kitchen. I slowed to a near crawl as I approached. One kitchen was the one I'd left, empty, filthy, coated in food and broken glass. The other led into a perfectly intact kitchen, neat, clean, and far from empty. A man sat at the table, head in his hands. Before him lay a pistol equipped with a silencer. So he'd gotten inside finally, but not the one I'd come from. The third window showed a grayish, empty room. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, illuminating an empty fold-out table, a recessed counter, and a door. I tried to run, but realized the utter foolishness of this plan. What if the man with the gun heard me? What if he came after me? I'd be a sitting duck. As if responding to my thoughts, the man suddenly stood up, grabbed his gun, and left the room. It seemed too good to be true, but what choice did I have? I kept going, keeping my focus on the gray room. Before long, I was a few scant yards away. Seized with a combination of inspiration and fear, I peered into the dirty version of my kitchen and closed the fridge door. The image winked out of sight. When I pressed experimentally at the place it had just been, I encountered nothing but empty darkness. No door, no wall. I reached out to close the second door, but the moment my hand left the corridor, a muffled thump reached my ears as hot agony exploded over my palm. I looked down and saw blood. The man stepped in front of me. We regarded each other for a flat, eerie second, then I shrank away. He shot at me again, but the bullet didn't pass the threshold of the fridge corridor. I pulled the door shut. A bullet shot past my arm, narrowly missing it, and then it was done. The door was closed, replaced with the same empty, reassuring darkness. I ran into the gray room. My feet slapped concrete, a jarring change after the hollow-sounding plastic of the corridor. My eyes adjusted to the relative dimness as adrenaline waned and the pain in my hand grew. Steeling myself, I looked down. The bullet had grazed me and taken off a wide strip of skin. It stung like hell, but it was superficial. I quickly washed my wound in the sink, drawing a hissing breath as the cold water seemingly set every nerve in my hand on fire. Then I cupped my hands and drank directly from the faucet. No point wasting my single bottle of water, and finally had a closer look at my surroundings. It was an empty break room. A few small tables, a counter with a sink and microwave, and a bulletin board papered with notices, disclosures, and posters. The depressing industrial ambiance set me on edge. A thick layer of dust coated everything. Cheap dishes were arranged by the sink. They looked brittle and old. I turned to the bulletin board. Everything there looked similarly ancient. I leaned in curiously. Birthday cards, gift exchange, retirement notices, work disclosures actually began to crumble when my breath hit them. I stepped back uneasily. It was wrong. The whole room was wrong. But unlike my apartments, there was a door and no murderer to be found. I jiggled the door handle experimentally. It was stiff, but finally turned. Rust flaked from the knobs as the door creaked open. It was another corridor, with a concrete floor, cinder block walls, and buzzing white lights. The hall stretched endlessly in either direction. No rooms or doors except for the one I just exited. I thought about going back inside the fridge, about reversing my steps, but then what? Back to the doorless, windowless trap? back to my would-be killer. Nevertheless, I used a chair to prop the break room open before picking a direction and setting off. My first assessment had been wrong. While there were no doors and no end in sight, corridors split off from the main hall, so expertly done they weren't even visible till you were on top of them. Each of these split-offs were marked with the words P.O.D. and a combination of letters and numbers. The first one I came across bore the sign P.O.D.F.C.H.O.M. 3409. I walked for what felt like hours. I even tried checking my phone, but it was useless as ever, and wouldn't let me set the timer. I had no way to judge time. The corridor showed no signs of terminating. Finally, I was so exhausted and scared that when I came across yet another POD alcove, I decided to have a look. Compared to the main corridor, this was a short hall, less than 30 yards, and lined with airtight metal doors. A few had small, dusty windows near the top. Against my better judgment, it's crazy the things we'll do to try and alleviate well-found terror, even when the alleviation is the worst thing you can do. I stood on my tiptoes and peered into one. I found myself staring at a tiny, stark, well-lit room. A man stood in the center with his back to me. He trembled faintly. Longish hair, dark red shot with gray, tumbled to his shoulders. Another window, nearly as small as the one I was peering into, was set into the wall opposite me. I caught a glimpse of a pale green sky and a rolling black ocean. In the distance, brown storm heads gathered over an incomprehensible mass. It was too small and I was too far to make sense of it, but the little I saw made my stomach feel loose and watery. The man looked over his shoulder. I gasped. He was older but exquisitely handsome. Cheekbones cast shadows, and sea-green eyes glittered in the harsh light. Then he smiled, lips stretching all the way up his cheeks and bearing several rows of crowded teeth. His teeth weren't sharp or oddly shaped, but that was almost worse than the alternative. The sheer number and arrangement of those otherwise normal teeth, combined with his almost alien beauty, wasn't right. My lizard brain was screaming that I wasn't looking at a human being. At best, it was an inexpert facsimile, a kind of coat worn by something else. At worst, I didn't want my mind to finish the thought. I reared back and retraced my steps to the main corridor, resolutely ignoring the other doors. I couldn't remember which way I'd come. Somehow I stayed calm, picking the direction that seemed most likely, and continued walking. Long after my legs and hips began to ache, I finally came across another offshoot hall. Rather than a POD designation, it was marked with Administration. I ducked in immediately and saw more doors, at least a dozen on either side. I tried a door at random. It didn't budge. Another, none opened. I ran up and down, frantically pushing and kicking each door I passed. Finally, towards the end, I saw a larger door with a placard attached. Exit. To your required place of being, this facility bears no responsibility as to your destination. I pushed the door. It slid open, blinding me with the bright, brilliant, warm daylight of a clear mid-morning. I stepped out. The door swung shut, leaving me in the foyer of an enormous, bustling library that I knew very well. I turned around and saw I'd just exited through the ladies' bathroom. On impulse, I opened it up and looked in. Just a normal, multi-stall restroom, complete with tiled floor and unmistakable odor of a public bathroom. Directly ahead, I saw a towering statue of a black bear with her cubs. Beyond that was a children's library. To the side were the checkout counters, and after that, the rest of the library unfolded more or less according to my memory. I spent most of my after-school hours here, all through high school, and a great deal of my free time here as an adult. It's a 10-minute drive from my apartment and, more importantly, I think, a short walk from the Bakersfield Amtrak station. I gathered myself and found an empty table upstairs. I tried to look up my apartment, but it doesn't exist anymore. So I'll wait here at the library. It closes long before 11 p.m., but it's safe. When it closes, I'll find a place to eat and stay there as long as I can. Around 10 p.m., I'll make my way to the Amtrak station. And with any luck, I'll be boarding a train tonight. I hope it takes me home. So close. This Raven. Now, my darlings, if you enjoyed this, please like and let me know. Please subscribe and ring the little bell so you'll know when to come back. And if you leave me a comment, I promise I'll reply.